Good morning po to each and everyone, to our schools division superintendent, our assistant schools division superintendent, Dr. Jonathan Fronda, and of course, Ma'am Cherry, our SDS, to all the faculty and staff of all the schools joining us today, our chief, Ma'am Janet Bautista, our OIC chief for SGOD, Dr. Sherling R. Macaspak. A pleasant morning po. Shall start our program. Our speakers are already here. And for us to have a maximum participation po, kindly send the link to our participants. We are expecting our dear school heads to be here since we are dealing with the basic education research. While our dear teachers are clustered already, they are having their session with our cluster coordinators. Everyone po, the non-teaching, even the teaching staff are also invited to join us this morning. Join us then to sing our nationalistic song.
Dear God, thank you for the opportunity to meet together. Please help us to come together to make this institution reflect your kingdom. Breathe life into our ideas and decisions. Help us build a team that has love and respect at its heart. Give us the strength to continue working for your kingdom in this time of pandemic. Lord, come give us the inspiration to be the best we can be. May we be a shining example of your goodness and truth within, wherever we are. Inspire our thoughts, discussions, and ideas, and continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of truth for the greater glory of you. We ask these things in your name. Amen.
Again, good morning po to all our participants. Allow me to greet lahat po ng mga participants po natin ngayon this morning. Of course, our first honors sa ating pong platform, sa ating YouTube, official YouTube channel, si Ma'am Edita Blas. Good morning, Ma'am. Ang able school head po ng Biliabunsaga Elementary School. Of course, followed by our dear Chief, Dr. Janet Valvaltista. Good morning, Ma'am. And of course, next yung ating mga teachers na po. Hello po. Also likewise, greetings to our Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Cherry Salarzan Ramos, our Assistant Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Jonathan A. Fronda, the Chief and Chairman, I should say, of the Schools Research Committee. We also have here Ma'am Rose Lily Esteban. Hi, Ma'am, the school head of Luna Elementary School. Our supervisor in mathematics, Sir Nilo Cantor. We are also joined here by our teachers from Sagana National High School. Oh, meron din pala tayong matend na teacher ngayon. Although they are having their cluster-based na technical assistance and quality assurance, they also opt to listen to our speakers this day. Of course, we have Ma'am Hilda Mariano. Ma'am, hello po, from Ambalatungan Elementary School. And Sir Johnny Lalas na nakatutok din po ngayon. Hi sir, from Sinili Integrated School. And the faculty and staff po ng Sinil Integrated School. Also, we have Ma'am Marilu Buizon ng Sagana Elementary School. Ever present, si Ma'am. Thank you very much po. And the rest po of our school heads, invited po kayo for today's training. We shall have 5 speakers po beginning this hour hanggang sa matapos po tayo this afternoon. Okay, so shall we start po? I'm gonna introduce our first speaker. Our first speaker is a cum laude graduate of the Philippine Normal University, North Luzon, an editor-in-chief, and a researcher herself. Said things are already in her blood. She is now one of the brilliant professors of the Philippine Normal University North Luzon campus in Alicia Isabela. Folks, friends, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome with virtual applause Ma'am Josie Jordan Hineta Rosete. Hi Ma'am, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Can you hear me na po?
Yes po, loud and clear, Ma'am.
Thank you very much, sir, for that introduction. And before I start my sharing with you this morning, I would just like to express how grateful and how honored I am to be invited as one of the speakers for today's session. So as I was listening to Sir Marfil's introduction, I learned that this is a mixture of audience for today, especially there would be faculty and staff, and of course our educational leaders. So I'm honored and my heart is on my throat right now medyo ninenervyos po ako because this would be my first, yes sir, this
Okay,
would be my
okay lang.
first big lecture since the pandemic started. So, talagang nakaka-nervyos pa rin siya kahit naka-look lang ako
Virtual.
dito sa monitor ng aking laptop at this
Ano
moment.
lang ma'am, okay lang po yan. Mababait po ang people of Santiago, especially our school heads and teachers.
Yes, thank you very much, Sir Marfil, for assuring me that because right now talaga I'm a little agitated about this matter. But I hope that I could get through the topic and the message that I would want to share with you today. Okay, so magsimula na tayo, Sir Marfil.
Yes ma'am, the screen is yours na po. Go ahead.
Okay, so the topic provided to me for this morning is language validation of research tool. So as I was researching on what to talk about in this particular topic, I zeroed in into the concepts of research tool and validation, okay? And then the concept of language validation will come towards the end na lang po. So I really hope that I would carry the message of this topic with you today. So allow me to introduce or provide to you the targets that I have in mind for this session. So I have provided three. The first one is to review concepts on research instrument or research tools. I chose the verb review because we all know these things already. We just want to look back at these concepts. Okay, and then revisit the importance of validity in research tools. And finally, to suggest ways to improve crafting research tools if you were to craft them. And then the content of my presentation or my sharing with you for today will revolve on three essential questions. So the first essential question is, what is a research tool? Why check for validity as far as research tool is concerned? And then what are conditions in developing the research tool? So before we dive into the discussion per se or the sharing per se, let me just share with you this comic strip I tried to look up just last night actually. So I would like to show you this because I would want you to ponder on what could have been the issue or the problem in the research that has been conducted. So this is like a sort of reality check on us as teachers and researchers as well. Okay, so I hope you're looking at the comic strip right now. So what could have been the problem? So what went wrong or what could have been the issue which was not answered or addressed in this particular comic strip? So looking at this comic strip, we might think or we might blame it on the research tool. Okay? So in the comic strip, it said that there is 50% above and then 50% below, which really doesn't well add up to whatever purpose we would have for research, no? So what could have been the problem in there? Problem would be, we could say it's on the research tool. So what is a research tool to begin with? So the research tool is AKA the instrument. So the instrument or research tool is a way for us to collect the data. Okay, so the research tool is just part of the concept of instrumentation. So we should be clarified with that. That instrument is not equivalent to the concept of instrumentation. So Frankel and Wallen defined instrumentation as the whole process of preparing to collect the data or the data. So in the process of collecting or preparing to collect the data, this is where the research tool comes in. And at the same time, the development of this research tool and how this research tool would be given to the intended participants later on so that we could collect our data. So practically, research tool is our means to get what we want, to get a basis for the inferences or the conclusions that we would want to make for our researches. Okay, now, why do we want to check for validity when we talk about research tool? So this is the traditional and old-fashioned way of defining validity. So we say that an instrument is valid if it measures what it is supposed to measure. Okay, so this is the classical way of defining it. But Frankel and Wallen provided us a more encompassing, okay, definition or purpose of why validity should be given ample consideration in our development of the research tool. So they say that the defensibility of the inferences that researchers would make on the data would practically depend on the instrument. So what does the validity have to do here? So when we say defensibility, it means that the inferences, the conclusions, the things that the researchers would um, zero in their study of the data would depend on how valid the instrument is. So if the instrument is valid, then it cements the inferences or the conclusion that the teachers or the researchers, I should say, would gain from the research based on the data. Okay, so that's how validity and the research tool would be connected. So it's like an assurance that we don't provide our readers or those who would peruse our researches later on and not so justifiable, okay, not justifiable basis for our inferences. Hence we should make sure that the research tool is valid. Okay, so when we secure validity in our researchers or our instruments or research tools, we develop sound evidence. Okay, so this sound evidence will demonstrate the interpretation that should match the purpose of our research. So for instance, if I were to research on the preferences in reading literature of students, okay? So the evidence I should collect and the instrument that I would develop to collect this data or evidence should really um, be pointing towards my purpose, that I'm looking for the preferences of students in reading literature. So I should not ask any other thing in the research tool but the preferences of students in reading literature. So something to that effect. Okay. All right. So when we make sure that our instruments are valid, they permit us as researchers to draw warranted conclusions about the characteristics of the individuals or situations that we try to study. So notice I have highlighted that valid instruments equals warranted conclusions. So no researcher would get wrong with the conclusion that they would make if the collected data had been validated, okay, to begin with. Okay, so that's the point of validity in research tool. Now, how do we ensure validity in our research instrument or research tool? So these are ways in how we could ensure that. So first, to identify an instrument or test that we would like to use. We would go deeper on how we identify this instrument later, but this is one of the things that we would want to do so that we could ensure our validity in the instrument. So identify the instrument. The second one is to look for evidence of validity by examining prior studies that have reported scores and use of the instrument. Of course, we would rely better on instruments which have been used by researchers already because this had been practically tools which gained the purpose these researchers wanted in the first place. And then we should look closely at the purpose for which the instrument was used in these studies. So we would like to do this because the purpose that we have might be different from the purpose of the instruments that are available. So we should make sure that our purpose is equivalent to the purpose or equates the purpose of the research instrument that we are trying to look for. Another one is to look at how the researchers have interpreted the scores in light of their intended use. So again, we would like to make sure that was the instrument use well gained data that is accurate and at the same time that has yielded its supposed purpose. Okay, and then evaluate whether the authors provide good evidence that links their interpretation to their use. Okay, so this is very important that we try to evaluate the uh, the evidence, okay? So that we would make sure that the evidence is entirely valid or validated. Okay, so let's answer the question, what are considerations in developing the research tool? Okay, so this is a real fast talk right now. We are towards the end of this sharing already. So what are the considerations? So first, we must locate and use instruments in its entirety. So this is on development. I'm sorry, I'm kind of distracted right now because somebody's calling me. But let me just focus on this. So there are three ways on how we can develop the research tool. The first one is to locate and use in its entirety the instrument. Okay, so when we locate and use entirely the instrument, we do not make alterations, we do not make modifications. We just adapt the instrument itself. Okay, the next one would be to locate and modify. So locating and modifying instrument entails change, alteration of some of the parts of the instrument. Probably because we might have a different, and not totally different, no, but a little different purpose in collecting data. So we cannot use in its entirety the instrument that we might have located because we have to change something so that it would be perfect for the purpose that we have in mind, okay, for the research. That's locating and modifying. So both of this means of developing the research tool actually has to make sure that um, we have permissions from authors, okay? So we ask permissions from the authors of this instrument so that we will not have problems on copyright later on. Okay, so it would be better if they agree or they approve of our use of their instruments. Okay, so in my reading in Creswell, he said that the consequences of doing that would be researchers who develop the instruments first would ask you for the result, and you wouldn't you basically would have to comply with this because you have used their instrument to begin with. Okay, and then the third one, and this is the hard path, is to develop own instrument. Mag-address lang po ako ng saglit ha. Sir Edil, baka naman po pwedeng pakisabi kay Ma'am Doinks. I'm doing a lecture right at this moment. Thank you very much. Okay, so the last one is to develop own instrument. Okay, so developing your own instrument is an arduous process. Okay, matindi siya. Kumbaga, ito yung hard path. Ito yung the path not taken, kumbaga. But if we develop our own instrument, we could say that it's rightfully ours. And at the same time, nobody could tell us that we should provide this result because we have used their instruments or whatsoever. So it's a hard thing to do, but we could say that it's 100% ours. Okay? So how do we search for these kinds of tools or instrument? Yeah, so there are ways that Creswell provided to us. First is to look in published journals or journal articles. So this would be one of the easiest ways to do. We look for research articles in journals and then eventually try to locate the instrument that the instruments which have been used, but sometimes the instruments are not readily available. Okay, so what we could do is to get connected to this writers and probably request a copy of these instruments or research tools from them. Okay, and then the next one would be to run an ERIC search. Okay, the ERIC search or searcheric.org is readily available over the internet. I think you might be using these things already right now. So this is accessible to everyone. So if we would like to look for existing instruments or research tools, we would like to go to this particular website, searcheric.org. Okay? And then examine guides to tests and instruments that are available commercially. So let me just put emphasis on the term commercially. Okay? So commercially means we have to pay for it. Kaya nga, the third suggestion for searching is to really examine the guides. Okay? We don't want to spend money on something that we would not be able to utilize to its highest potential, ano, kumbaga. So we would like to make sure that the instrument that we would buy really serves the purpose. Yan. So kailangan i-examine natin yung guides on this test and instrument. So these are the things that we could do when we want to search or look for our instruments, okay, or research tools. All right, now, after searching these research tools, we might ask ourselves, so which one will I be choosing? Okay, so these are guide questions that we could ask ourselves for us to, uh, understand our choice, okay, of this instruments. Sorry, tumatawag pa rin si Madam. Okay, so the first question would be, have authors developed the instrument recently? And can you obtain the most recent version? So established research tools or instruments are getting updated every now and then, okay? So our question would be, if this is the research tool that I really wanted to use in my research, would it be updated? Is this recent? Is there a new version to it? And if there is a new version, can I get a copy of this new version? How will I be able to get a copy of this new version? So questions like this. Okay, so kung medyo mahirap, syempre, you don't wanna spend so much time trying to get this or secure this kind of instrument or research tool, no? All right, the next one would be, is the instrument widely cited by other authors? So if these instruments are cited widely, cited widely, then you can be ensured that it has established, kumbaga parang naka-establish na ng pangalan niya. You're assured that this is basically a tool that you can use in your research, and at the same time, you can rely on it and that it is valid. Okay? Ano pang question? Are reviews available for the instrument? So this is just like buying anything, no? That before we go and buy stuff, we would like to look at the reviews to give us a security or to ensure to us that what we are buying or trying to secure would be something that is okay. That's something valid, okay? Something that we could really use for the purpose of our research. All right. Another is there information about the reliability and validity of scores from past uses of the instrument? So are there available researches which shows reliability and validity using this kind of instrument? Okay, what else? Does the procedure for recording the data fit the research question or hypothesis in your study? This, I guess, would be one of the most important questions that we would want to ask ourselves when we try to choose which instruments we would like to secure, okay? Sakto ba? Does it fit the hypothesis, the purpose of our study to begin with, okay? So if you could say yes to that, then eventually that's a good instrument that we would like to secure. And then, does the instrument contain accepted scales of measurement? These accepted scales would depend and also on the kind of research that you would be doing. Would it be quantitative? Because there are scales for that. Qualitative, there's a separate scale for that. Or is it mixed method? So there is a scale for that. So which instrument has the scale that I need. So if I were to do some qualitative research, then eventually the scale I should be looking for, or the instrument that I should be looking for, is towards that kind of scaling on qualitative researches. Okay, and then on if it were quantitative, the same thing. Are there statistical data that your research need that would be equivalent to the instrument that you are looking for or you are searching? So kung pareho ng kumbaga purpose, pareho ng statistical treatment, pareho pa kayo ng purpose or something like that, you might want to secure that instrument. But the bottom line here is that ano ba yung na point natin? What's the scale that we would like to get at in our measurement? So we have to consider that. All right, so those are questions that we could ask ourselves in answering or selecting which one instrument should work best for us. All right, so now this table that I'm going to show you is cited by Creswell, but this has been developed by Benson and Clark in 1983 pa po ito. So these are the steps in developing or constructing an instrument. So remember, we said earlier that the development of an instrument is an arduous process. Okay? Ito yung pinakamatinding proseso. Kumbaga mahirap siya talaga, but there is benefit and we could gain big from it. So ito yung talaga, kumbaga, actual na phase ng development of instrument. So we have planning, construction, quantitative evaluation, and then validation. So validation comes last. So in planning, we state the purpose of the test and the target groups, our participants. We identify and define the domain of tests. So in identifying the domains of tests, we have to consider the variables. Okay? Kaya nga, we need to do some review of literature on the variable or construct that we would include in the researches. Kasi we couldn't develop the right research tool if we do not have a good grasp of the variables that we intend to study. Okay, give open-ended questions to target group, interpret open-ended comments, write objectives, and select item format. So this would be under planning. So all considerations in the selection of variables, on the objectives, and then selection of the item format would, if it were quantitative, would do a multiple choice, a checklist, or something like that. So phase 2 would be on construction. So we try to develop the table of specifications, hire and train item writers. Probably these are on big researches. Write pool items. When we say pool items po, these are items to which we just throw in, okay, things that we would like to include, okay, because in the development of the research tool, not everything that you have written would be okay, okay, so kailangan meron tayong parang pool, nandun lang siya lahat, para kung alin ang matira doon, after all the validations and reliability tests, then that would be the tool for us to use, okay. Ano pa, validate content, have judges complete qualitative evaluation. Judges here would be experts in the field of the research field that you would want to do. If it were on language, of course, it would be language teachers. On math, it would be seasoned mathematics teachers and mathematics researchers probably. And then develop new or revise items, especially if the pool of items that you have prepared have sort of been rejected mostly, okay? And then phase 3, quantitative evaluation would be pilot testing, yan, administering of the pilot test, debriefing of the subjects, reliability checking and calculation, and then item analysis, revising the instrument itself, and then for going for the second pilot test. So this is all on quantitative evaluation. So we subject our questions into the reliability tests and validity tests. And of course, the last one would be validation. Say in the construction, we already have validated things, but there is also towards the end, the process or the phase of validation. So administer the second pilot test. Again, we run the item analysis, repeat steps of revision and pilot administration and item analysis, begin validation, administer for validation data, and then continue validation. So dito pa lang po makikita natin na talagang never stop yung validation natin. Why is it so important to validate our research tool? Alam nyo na po yan. Because we want our evidence, our result, the data that we collect to be justifiable of the hypothesis that we have, the conclusions that we have, the inferences that we have in our research. Okay, so yun po ang kanyang bottom line parati. Kaya napaka-importante yung validated yung ating research tool. We cannot go wrong on a research if we have made sure that the tool that we have used for data collection is valid. Okay? So yun naman kasi talaga ang puso ng pagbuo ng research, no? The data that would be collected. So might as well ensure that when you start collecting data, the instrument or tool that you're using for collecting the data is something that is valid or something that would assure you of kumbaga, good harvest ng data. All right, and now I'm ending this with some tips that we could use for developing the research tools, okay, or further writing the research tools. Okay, so the first one would be to be clear about variables to be assessed. Ito na, nabanggit na po natin kanina, we have mentioned that the variables are so important. We do not start writing the research tool or instrument without a clear grasp of the variables. So what are variables that we would like to target? And from these variables, we define it literally, we define it operationally, and work from there on developing the questions. So dapat maliwanag. Another one is to review existing instruments that measure similar variables in order to decide upon a format and to obtain ideas on specific items. This is the very reason why we do review of related literature. So in the related literature, we look for concepts, we even look for the things related to our variables. That would be including our instruments that we could use in order for us to develop our instruments or modify whatever available instrument there is or use per se that instrument that we could find. Yan. So existing instruments. And then decide on a format for each variable because different variables often require different formats. So if our variable would be quantitative, that requires a different format. If it were qualitative, that requires a different format. In quantitative researchers, there is heavy use of statistical tools. While on qualitative researches, the quantitative analysis of data would be a little. Okay, so more on qualitative analysis. So ganun yun. So dapat we know what format based on our research design as well. And of course, the variables in the research design or the research itself. Okay, the first one would be in compiling and or writing items, each item should be logically valid. So logically valid means item is consistent with the definition of the variable. Babalik na naman po tayo dun sa una kanina, clear grasp of the variables because we would want that the item is consistent with what we understand about the variable. Okay, so I'm coloring this blue because this is where we could put in our language validation. So, ibig sabihin, when we try to craft our items in the research tool, we make sure that we understand the definition and everything that we write in there is all about towards that variable. Gaya po nung sinabi ko kanina, preferences in literature, in reading literature. Okay, so if I were to look for preferences, I would not ask them about other things. Like, hindi ko tatanungin kung ano ba, anong movie ang paborito nila, ano pa ba, anong pastime ang gusto-gusto nila. Kasi that would be futile in my study because I would like to go for preferences. So my variable would be preferences. So I'll stick to that. So all things that I'm going to do in writing the items would be on this variable. Okay? So even when we craft our items, that's basically what we have in mind. So clear understanding of the definition of this variable. Okay, what else? We try to ensure that, ito napaka-importante po, vocabulary is appropriate for the intended respondents. So sometimes, I don't know if you have been through this feeling as well. If you were to answer lengthy survey questions, ganyan. Di ba kapag nabigyan po tayo ng mga researches or instruments to answer, medyo we are stressed out if it's too lengthy. Mas stress out pa kung hindi natin maintindihan kung ano yung gustong puntuhin ng ating writer or yung ating researcher. Okay? So we would like to make sure that the vocabulary is understandable because we couldn't collect the data or the evidence that we need if our um, participants or respondents couldn't understand what we are saying in the first place. Yan yung problema. Okay, so make sure that the vocabulary is something that would be understandable. So how do we ensure this? We should have colleagues review the items for logical validity. So pwedeng a colleague who is a researcher, a colleague in the same unit perhaps. If you are an English teacher, you would like to ask the review of your items by a fellow English teacher, something like that. So it's on logical validity. So again, this things are colored in blue because that's we could put in validation in language. Okay. And then write twice as many items as you intend to use in the final form because as I have said, when you put it into reliability tests, chances are not all the questions would be okayed or approved for the final instrument. Okay, and then locate a group of people with experience appropriate to your study. So this group of people with experience appropriate to the study are the experts, okay, in the field. So I also color this blue kasi this would also entail language validation. So if we're looking for language validation, we should make sure that one of the expert people, yan, experienced people that we would like to uh, talk about with regard our instrument would be an expert in language. Okay? Kasi, i-validate niya kung yung gusto mo bang sabihin dito sa sentence na ito ay naaayon talaga dun sa structure niya. Okay, so isa pa yon. And also, we of course, we wouldn't like to read an instrument which is grammatically faulty in the first place. Okay, so yun yung ating mga ways on how we could make sure that the instrument would be validated as far as language is concerned. And then, of course, we should not forget this, we try out the instrument. Because trying out the instrument is the beginning of the reliability testing na. So once we try it out, that's the time that we could subject it to statistical analysis and find out which items are reliable or which items would be valid. All right. And so with that, ayan, balik tayo dun sa ating reality check kanina. So what would be the implication of this? So if it were the instrument that has been the problem, how do we ensure that we do not get the same result? Okay, 50% and 50% above and 50% below. The answer would be to establish a valid instrument. Okay, establishing a valid instrument shall go through the tedious process, especially if we develop our own instrument. But again, the rewards for this developing our own instrument is unparalleled. Okay, priceless, kumbaga. Okay, so I'm going to end that sharing with you for today with this idea of research tool. So these are the references which have been used in the discussion. Thank you very much po.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Josie Jordan Hineta.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, ma'am. Before we end dun sa part ni Ma'am Josie Jordan, if we have questions po regarding po sa presentation ni ma'am, pwede po nating i-chat po sa comment section po natin dito sa ating YouTube channel. And then we'll try po to answer, of course, with Ma'am Josie Jordan. Nakikita niya rin naman po sa end niya yung mga questions po natin, if there are. Meron lang tayong 10 seconds na delay sa broadcast. Kaya sa mga ano po, sa mga nakatry na po ng StreamYard, habang nagsasalita po ako, meron po siya 10 seconds na delay. So, hintayin po natin after 10 seconds. Kung may tanong po tayo, especially for those who are already structuring or crafting their tool for research, pwede po tayong magtanong. Hintayin lang natin, Ma'am Josie, para po masagot po natin yung query nila. And
Yes, sir.
then right
Pasensya na
after
po
that,
talaga, sir. Kanina medyo nadidistract kami tumatawa.
yes, okay lang, ma'am. But
Wala ako
everything
sa
is
focus.
clear, comprehensive, ma'am, and very
Thank you, sir.
thorough po ang ating pong discussion, especially on the language part na po. Okay. So, meron po ba tayong, if we have questions po, please pakisulat na lang po or type dyan sa ating pong comment section. Yan, the 10-second delay is real. Again, habang naghihintay po tayo, ma'am, on behalf of STO Santiago City, to our Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Cherry Salarson Ramos, and our ASDS, Dr. Jonathan A. Fronda, we express our sincerest appreciation and gratitude po for sharing your expertise and your technical know-how on this subject matter, especially for our dear teachers and school heads in the Schools Division of Santiago City. We are forever grateful, ma'am. And for that, allow me to share din po my screen for the certificate po. Pwede mo muna siyang ma'am, tawag nito, screenshot, ma'am. Pero definitely, I will send you po the hard copy po.
Sige, sir. No problem.
Yes, ma'am. So, Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, Schools Division of Santiago City awards this Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Josie Jordan G. Rosete for her invaluable services rendered as a resource speaker on instrumentation language validation during the conduct of the Division Basic Education Research Conference or DBERC 2021. Given this 28th day of April 2021 at the Schools Division of Santiago City, signed Cherry S. Ramos, EDD CESO 5, Schools Division Superintendent.
Yan. Thank you very much po, sir. I'm virtually accepting it. At sir, kapag natanggap ko ba yan, gumagalaw-galaw din talaga.
Hindi, ma'am.
parang Harry Potter lang, gumagalaw-galaw mga bagay-bagay.
Yes, ma'am. Ano siya?
Diba?
Opo. I think the topic was clearly explained naman po. Mga ano lang po itong nandito, ma'am. Words of commendation and
Salamat
gratitude.
po.
Thank
Thank
you
you
for
po.
sharing
You're
with
so
us
generous sa mga pag-thank you rin po. Salamat po.
in this field, Ma'am Josie. Salute. Si Ma'am Ruby Simbulan po, ma'am, ay our master teacher po from Kabulay High School.
Good morning, Ma'am Ruby. Thank you very much po.
Yes po. Okay. So, again, thank you very much, Ma'am Ma'am Josie Jordan Hineta Rosete. Nasanay po kasi ako na Hineta.
Yes. Nalaga pa ako nun, sir,
Josie-
nandun ka sa school.
Yes, ma'am. Ito rin po si Sir Malzam. Ayan.
Thank you,
So,
sir.
yan po yung mga nagpo-post po. Module.
Okay,
I'm
module.
assessing the effectiveness of module. Si Ma'am Rose Lily Esteban, ano po din siya, PNU grad.
Hello po, ma'am. Kapwa Pinyo.
Opo, school head po ng Luna. And of
Ay,
course,
nakakatuwa.
Opo, Ma'am Edita Blas.
Thank you po.
So, again, ma'am, thank you. I know this will not be the last time that we will be seeing you in our
Ay,
research
nakakatuwa
journey
naman, sir.
in SDO Santiago City.
Yes,
We will
sir.
be, we will be siguro inviting you as panel na po, ma'am. Hindi na po
Sige, sir.
speaker later on.
Nako, it would be an
Para
honor
naman,
again, sir.
yes, ma'am. Para naman po ma-check po yung aming mga output, especially on research. Si Sir
Opo.
Ablan. Si Christian Ablan, I don't know if PNU1 siya.
Siyempre, sir, kilala ko si Sir Christian. O, alam niya pa ang aking pet name, Jopot.
Yes.
Hello, Sir Christian.
Ayun po. Again, thank you very much and loud virtual applause to our first speaker for today's session. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Josie.
Bye-bye po.
Again, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Prof. Josie Jordan G. Rosete of Philippine Normal University, North Luzon. At this juncture, let's pave way din po for our next speaker. Dire-diretso na po tayo so that matapos po tayo ng medyo maaga-aga so that you can go to your other business for this day. So our second speaker is also a professor from Philippine Normal University. He is our mathematics teacher, mathematics professor po namin sa Philippine Normal University way back nung panahon ko, 2012, nung graduate po ako. And he is very intelligent and really very good professor po namin, an inspiring professor especially in mathematics. Hindi ko na po patatagalin pa. Now a doctor, tulungan niyo po akong i-welcome si Sir Dr. Delberto Andres, Professor of Philippine Normal University, North Luzon. Hi, sir.
Hello, good morning, Sir
Good morning,
Marfil.
sir.
Yeah.
Magandang umaga po.
Magandang umaga rin po, sir. Parang lalo akong ninenervyos sa ganitong pagkakataon. Parang mas nakaka-nervyos ang virtual pala. But,
Yes, sir. Pero okay,
yes, sir.
okay lang naman.
Yes, sir. But anyway, sir, first, nagpapasalamat ako for inviting us again for this program. And I am very happy for this morning to share what I know about the topic which is assigned to me.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Sir, shall we start na po, sir? The screen is now yours, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, nakikita niyo na po yung aking first slide?
Yes, sir. Apa.
Yes, sir. Okay. But anyway, I will not be discussing this DepEd Order 39 or Series 2016, sir. But I just want to start my discussion with this order, DepEd Order 39 Series 2016, which is the adoption of the Basic Education Research Agenda, or which is also known as BERA. And it was signed by the then Secretary, Armin Luistro. And I want to get or deal with one of this concern regarding this adoption. Okay, the DepEd adopts the enclosed BERA, which provides guidance to DepEd and its stakeholders in the conduct of the education research and in the utilization of research results to inform the department's planning, policy, and program development aligned with its vision, mission, and core values. Now, I got this memo, I got this order, because as we know, educators now are really into research. So that's why my topic for this morning is just an introduction to research, although yun nga nabanggit kanina ni Ma'am Jopot na maaring karamihan sa atin ngayon ay nag-craft na ng kanilang mga research. But I think this topic, this sharing of mine is more helpful to those teachers who will be starting making their research. Okay, so let us now have the introduction to research. I will be discussing the general concept of research. Now, for this discussion, I will be sharing the definition of research, the characteristic of the scientific method, the characteristic of scientific knowledge, and of course, the last one is the general approaches to research. But then, this last part, I will just share a little because I think the next sharer will be discussing the general approach, the general methods on how or what methods are we going to use when we have that kind of research? So let me start now. For the first one, we need to define research. So research, what is research? So we have search, and process. So in my screen, meaning again, search, find, process. So what does it mean? If you look at these three words, research, or research and process, meaning we have to go back again, we have to investigate again by following certain steps by steps or following certain phases just to find a clear answer or solution to a particular problem. In other words, when we say this, it's a process in looking at solution of a given problem, which can be used as a basis for policy formulation, policy enhancement, or improvements. In other words, we can say that research is a systematic investigation into any study of materials and sources in order to establish facts and reach new conclusion. Actually, yun naman talaga ang purpose kung bakit tayo nagre-research. Because we want to know, we want to have a new conclusion for that particular problem. Magkakaroon tayo ng ano ba yung solution for this problem. What will be the best solution? What will be the best solution? What will be our generalization for this particular problem? Okay, so, but before you can come up with policy, it should be backed up with empirical or the observed data, which requires the process of research. By the way, when we are talking about policy formulation, this is actually the development of effective and acceptable courses of action for addressing what has been placed on the policy agenda. In our situation today brought about by the pandemic, of course, we can say that using the module or the modular approach or the blended approach is, I think, this is an example of policy that was used to address the issue of health, safety, as well as to continue the learning process of our learners. Okay, so research is an organized inquiry carried out to provide information for solving problems. A while ago, we discussed research that it is a process. So meaning when it is a process, we follow a step-by-step, we follow a certain phases. So in this case, when we have that organized inquiry, of course, we need to have that statement. What will be the problem? Then, of course, when we say problem, that will be assessed during our needs assessment, I should say. Then after that, after having that statement, then we have that hypothesis. So you notice that we need this to have a step by step. After identifying the statement of the problem or identifying the problem, then we have the hypothesis. Then of course, after that having hypothesis, we have the procedure wherein in that procedure, materials are involved. So kanina nga yung diniscuss ni Ma'am Chopot about the validation, that is actually part of the procedure when we have conducting research. Then after that, after following all the procedures and all the necessary steps by steps, phases, and of course, from that, we will come up with a conclusion or answer to that particular problem that we had. So remember, research is said to be the cornerstone of every science. So what does it mean? Ano bang ibig sabihin pag sinasabi natin it is the cornerstone of every science? Research is the cornerstone of every science. Remember, all theories, all principles that are scientifically made are output of the research. Wala po tayong magiging theories, wala po tayong magiging principles kung hindi lahat ito ay nagdaan sa research. That's why research is very important because from that research, we will come up with theories, principles, and the likes. Okay, so research is also a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information to increase our understanding of the world in general and of the phenomenon under study in particular. Now, if you look at it, the definition of this research, masasabi natin ang research ay pwede rin siyang maging deductive in nature or pwede rin siyang maging inductive in nature. But in this definition now, research is a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information to increase our understanding of the world in general and of the phenomenon under study in particular. So that is from general, we came up with a particular. That particular, we are now referring to the solution of that particular or of those problems. Now, why do we need to conduct research? Bakit kinakailangang mag-conduct tayo ng research? So, inuulit ko po na pag nag-conduct tayo ng research, we have to follow a process. Hindi po from one step going to third step, then go back to the second step. So we should have to follow step by step certain phases. Just for example, in validating our instrument, na kung saan ito yung minention ni Ma'am Chopot, na of course, when we say validation of the instrument, kailangan meron tayong first phase, tapos kailangan natin ng second phase and third phase hanggang sa talagang totally validated yung ating instrument na gagamitin. So katulad rin po ng research, we have to follow a certain steps by steps or let us say phases. So students, professors, researchers, research centers, government, practitioners, newspapers, people, TV networks, market research firms, schools, hospitals, social service, political parties, consulting firms, HR departments, public interest organization, insurance, law firms conduct research as part of their job. Tayo nga mga teachers, we do our research because this is really part of our job. Now, what are the reasons why do we need to conduct research? First, for us to be better informed, for us to be less biased decision. In contrast to guessing, hunches, intuition, and other personal experience. Now, of course, gusto natin talaga na we are conducting research because of this reason, to be better informed, and of course, in contrast to guessing, hunches, intuition. Kasi nga, napakahirap po kasi na magbigay lamang tayo ng conclusion or generalization or answer to that particular questions or problems by merely using our intuition. That is, merely using our intuitions, we make use of our senses. By just observing, by just making an observation, so yun na ang ibibigay nating magiging conclusion natin. So hindi po ganon. So we need to really conduct research that is following step by steps. So ito po ang iniiwasan po kasi natin na magbigay tayo ng conclusions or generalization na by merely using our intuition or yung maging bias tayo sa ating mga decisions. Now we have to sabi nga doon, we have to go back, we have to investigate para maging firm ang ating decision, para maiwasan yung bias na decision. Then of course, in contrast to guessing, so napakahirap po kasi nung guess lang tayo ng guess. Then after that, yung palang guessing natin ay walang patutunguhan. So that's why, ang ating research ay napakahalaga if we really follow the rules, if we really follow the steps, step by steps, and following the phases. Okay, so now, therefore, when we say research, it is concerns with what? That is referring to the facts and conclusions and how scientific critical components and how then of course we have to follow the scientific method, we have to follow the scientific so that we can come up with scientific knowledge based on the scientific method that we use. Research is iterative process that eventually seeks to explain or solve an identified problem. So sabi nga natin, nire-reiterate natin na we do research just to seek an explanation or just to give an answer to identified problem. Okay, now here, we have the characteristics now of the scientific method. So by the way, what is the difference when we are talking about scientific method and scientific knowledge? Of course, lagi kasi magkasama pag sinasabi natin ang scientific method and scientific knowledge. Of course, sabi nga natin na now we are using this scientific method, meaning we are following the steps by steps. Then after that scientific method, we came up with scientific knowledge. Napaka-importante po kasi na gamitin natin lagi ang scientific method para sa magkaroon tayo ng scientific knowledge. Yun po ang isa sa pinaka-importante pagdating sa paggamit ng ating scientific method. Now, what are the characteristics of scientific method? First, we have tentative. So what does it mean when we say tentative? So meaning we need to constant review. So magkaroon tayo ng constant review kasi nga habang tumatagal, meron tayong natutuklasan. Through observation, through going into process, meron tayong natutuklasan. Then second one, we have empirically verifiable. So researchable. Then ethically neutral, what harm or risk involved to respondents, confidentiality and privacy. Now, gusto ko lang pong i-share regarding dun sa ethics. I believe ang SDO Santiago ay meron na po silang ethics committee pagdating sa research. So, yan pa ang pagkakaalam ko sa ating Division of Santiago na talagang meron na kung saan talagang napaka-importante po na magkaroon ng ethics committee pagdating sa research ang ating division. Dahil nga, sabi nga po, para at least maiwasan na rin or para na rin sa yung bang safety ng ating researchers and at the same time yung ating respondents. So, kailangan magkaroon po tayo ng ethics committee para at least mapangalagaan natin ang researchers and at the same time yung ating respondents. Kasi sa ngayon, napakahirap po ng kukuha na lang ng data sa ating mga respondents without the sabihin natin na wala yung hindi pa nagpaalam. So ito dadaan doon sa ating ethics committee. Then next we have shared and made public. Okay, so now, what are the purpose of research? Ano po ba ang purpose ng research? Bakit tayo nagre-research? First, we have the first one there is exploration. So when we say exploration, this involves familiarizing a researcher to a particular topic. Gaining some familiarity, discovering some of its main dimensions. Meaning, we need to discover, we need to explore. The second one is description or describe. Description meaning we have to gather, we have to describe. Summary, actually, when you are describing, you are gathering. What are the data to be gathered? Who are your participants? Sino ba yung ang ating mga participants at saan gagamitin? Makakatulong ba itong participants natin na aakma ba doon sa ating tinutumbok na particular questions or problems? And of course, the last one there is explanation. We need to explain why, testing, understanding the causal relations. So actually, these are the three important purposes of research: exploration, description, and explain. Okay, so ito na po yung binabanggit ko sa inyo kanina na we have a lot of types of research na pwede nating gamitin sa panahon ngayon. Kaya nga lang po, sabi ko nga, I will just be discussing this in ayun bang hapyaw lang because the next sharer will be talking on what method or what research is used is applicable for a particular problem. Okay, so let me share this one, types of research according to purpose. The first one there is fundamental, pure, or basic. We have the laboratory research, then we have the applied, evaluation, action, social impact. Okay, so let me discuss this one by one. So we have the basic research. It's starting point for the search of new knowledge. It provides a foundation for knowledge and foundations that are generalizable to many policy areas, problems or area of study, source of the tools with the methods, theories, and ideas. Research is driven by scientist curiosity or interest in scientific questions. The main motivation is to expand man's knowledge, not to create or invent something. There is no obvious commercial value to the discoveries that result from basic research. For example, basic science investigations probe for answer to questions such as how did the universe begin? What are protons, neutrons, and electrons composed of? How do slime molds reproduce? What is the specific genetic code of the fruit fly? Okay, so next we have applied research. Now, of course, when we re-applied, sabi nga natin, hindi lahat kasi ng klase ng research ay pwede natin i-apply doon sa ating particular questions or particular problem. So, like for example here, applied research, this refers to the scientific study and research that seeks to solve practical problems. Applied research is used to find solutions to everyday problems, cure illness, and develop innovative technologies rather than to acquire knowledge for knowledge's sake. For example, applied researchers may investigate ways to improve agricultural crop production. This is more on science. Treat or cure a specific disease, improve the energy efficiency at homes, offices, or modes of transportations. In other words, when we are talking about applied research, I think this research is more applicable in science. It's more applicable in science. Okay, so we have this applied or it is application of the methods, ideas, theories from basic research. Want to apply and tailor knowledge to address a specific practical issue towards development of more efficient technologies or particular way of doing things. This address issue of application and it asks, does it work? So ito ba ay applicable, ito ba ay effective doon sa particular na ini-investigate natin. Okay, so next we have action. Advances the aim of basic and applied research to the point of utilization, concerned with the production of results for immediate application or utilization. It improves practices and methods and generates technologies and innovations for application to specific technological situations. And the emphasis is here and now. I believe sa DepEd po yata is karamihan po yata ang, I do not know if I am correct, na karamihan po yata ay mga teachers gumagawa ng action research. Ito po kasi yung madalas kong naririnig sa karamihan sa mga teachers na they are making their action research na kung saan, sabi nga po natin, ang action research ay ito yung pangmadalian kumbaga, na ito yung problem, andiyan kaagad yung solution. So concerned with the production of results for immediate application or utilization. Nakita natin sa problema, ito, here is the problem. So nagkaroon tayo, nag-conduct tayo. Then after making a research, investigation, following step by steps, we come up with a result. That result that can be used to answer, to address that particular problem. So I think pag nating action is yung pangkwan lang po ito, yung kumbaga it's not for bigger users, kumbaga pangmaliitan lang. For example, in a classroom situation, you can have an action research na kung saan ang respondents mo lang ay one class or two classes. Okay, so next we have the correlational research. This refers to the systematic investigation or statistical study of relationship among two or more variables. So when you are looking for the relationship between two variables, then you can make use of the correlational research. It seeks to establish a relation or association or correlation between two or more variables that do not readily lend themselves to experimental manipulation. For example, if you want to test the hypothesis, listening to music lowers blood pressure levels. Of course, without having an experiment, without having research on this, pwede tayong magbigay kaagad ng ating conclusion by merely using our intuition. Pero sabi nga natin, para maging firm yung ating decision, yung ating generalization, we have to make research. Thus, listening to music lowers blood pressure levels. So there are two ways of conducting research for this particular. We have the experimental and survey. Experimental, group samples and make one group listen to music and then compare the BP levels. Then another one, survey, ask people how they feel, how often they listen, and they compare. So now, if you look at it, doon sa experimental and survey, kasi pag survey, this is merely, what is this? Merely uh, interview or merely having the questionnaire. Pero dun sa experimental po kasi sinasabi, of course, magkakaroon tayo dyan ng experimental group. Okay, so now, dun sa correlation. Okay, tignan natin yung example ng correlation. We want to correlate the salary of the performance of the teachers. We want to correlate the job satisfaction and the job performance of the teachers. Years employed and the job performance of the teachers. So for this particular correlation, our predictor variables here are salary, job satisfaction, and years employed. Na kung saan, ibig bang sabihin, pag mataas ang salary, maganda ba ang job performance ng teachers? Pag maganda ba, pag satisfied ba si teachers, ibig sabihin ba maganda ba ang kanyang performance? Or kung matagal na ba si teachers na employed, okay ba ang kanyang performance? So yun, we need to correlate these two predictor variables and the outcome variables. Now, according to methods, historical, the purpose is to collect, verify, synthesize evidence to establish facts that defend or refute your hypothesis. It uses primary sources, secondary sources, and lots of qualitative data sources such as logs, diaries, official records, reports, etc. The limitation is that the sources must be both authentic and of course, let us see this one. Okay, by the way, nowadays, nabanggit kanina ni Ma'am Chopot regarding the qualitative and quantitative research. Sa ngayon po kasi, before, mas marami ho kasing research before na more on quantitative. Tapos, nagkaroon ng situation na kung saan nag-concentrate sa qualitative, but now, naging mix na po to. Some research nowadays are a combination of quali and quanti. Okay, historical research is research involving analysis of events that occurred in the remote or recent past. The application, we have historical research can show patterns that occurred in the past and over time, which can help us to see where we come from and what kind of solutions we have used in the past. Understanding this can add perspective on how we examine current events and educational practices. So these are the involved when you are making use of historical research. First, you need to identify the research topic and formulate your research problem or questions. Number two, data collections or literature review. Number three, evaluation of materials. Three, data synthesis. Five, report preparation or preparation of the narrative expositions. Meaning, yung result na po dyan padating sa number five. Now, let us now proceed to the descriptive research. So, it refers to research that provides an accurate portrayal of characteristics of a particular individual, situation, or group. Descriptive research, also known as statistical research. These studies are a means of discovering new meaning, describing what exists, determining the frequency with which something occurs, and categorizing information. It attempts to describe and explain conditions of the present by using many subjects and questionnaires to fully describe a phenomenon. Survey research design methodology is one of the most popular for thesis or dissertation. So usually, descriptive is a kind of methods that is being used for thesis and dissertation. So karamihan na ginagamit na research method is the descriptive survey for their thesis and dissertation. Okay, so in short, Descriptive research deals with everything that can be counted and studied, which has an impact of the lives of the people it deals with. For example, finding the most frequent disease that affects the children of a town. The reader of the research will know what to do to prevent the disease, thus more people will live a healthy life. So when we say finding the most frequent disease that affects the children of a town, then we have this write-up. Of course, the reader of the research will know what to do to prevent the disease. Thus, more people will live a healthy life because meron na silang pangahawakan eh. Meron na silang idea, meron na silang, kumbaga, there's a conclusion already that what these people will do for a healthy living. So next, we have the case and field research design. This is also known as ethnographic research. It uses direct observation to give a complete snapshot of a case that is being studied. It is useful when not much is known about a phenomenon, uses few subjects. So nowadays, meron na rin pong mga gumagawa ng, I think marami na rin ang gumagawa ng research using this ethnography. So ethnographic research. So yun nga po, yung isa sa aming mga kasama sa PNU, he is having his research, making use of this ethnographic research. So development time series research design. Data are collected at certain points in time going forward. There is an emphasis on time patterns and longitudinal growth or change. So then next we have quasi-experimental research design. Now, I think this quasi-experimental research design is the same as the experimental design. The only difference there is, doon kasi sa quasi-experimental, it says here, this research design approximates the experimental design but does not have a control group. Unlike doon sa experimental research design kasi, meron silang dalawang two groups. The first group is the control group and the other one is the experimental group. So I think this is the one of the difference between the quasi-experimental research design and the experimental research design. So you take note of that. Sa quasi, wala po tayong, isa lang po yung ating group, which is the experimental group, but they do not have the control group. Unlike the experimental research design, they have the experimental group or the experimental group, and they have the control group. Kontrolado yung they manipulate the control group. Okay, so ito. Experimental research is an objective, systematic, controlled investigation for the purpose of predicting and controlling phenomena and examining probability and causality among selected variables. So the word there is controlling. Diyan po pumapasok yung tinatawag nating control group. They have to control one group versus the other group. Experimental research design is most appropriate in controlled settings such as laboratories. The design assumes random assignment of subjects and random assignments to group E and C. It attempts to explore cause and effects, relationships where causes can be manipulated to produce different kinds of effects. Because of the requirements of random assignments, this design can be difficult to execute in the world non-laboratory setting. And I think one of the isa sa pinakamahirap na experiment ay experimental research design kasi nga yun nga po sabi nga I think isa siya sa mahirap gawin, I should say, because of the process. Because you have two groups here. You have the control and the experimental group. The simplest experimental design includes two variables and two groups of participants. The two variables, we have the independent versus the dependent variables. The independent variable is the predictor variable, whereas the dependent variable is the outcome variable. Researchers manipulate and control the IV or the independent variables to study its effect on the dependent variable. So that's why, as we have said, you have the independent and the dependent variable, as well as you have the control and the experimental group for that experimental kind of design. The two groups of participants, which are the control versus experimental group, before beginning the experiment, the researchers assign his or her sample to two different groups. Yun nga po yung ating control group and the experimental group. So when we say the experimental group, these are the treatment group or the clinical group. The control group receives the group no manipulations of the IV, no treatment, whereas the experimental group receives the manipulation of the IV. Sorry, nagkabaliktad po yung pagkakasabi ko kanina, that when we have that control group, there are no manipulation that will be happened, while the experimental group receives the manipulation of the IV or the manipulation of the variables. Okay, so let's now have the causal comparative or the expo factor research design. This research design attempts to explore cause and effect relationship where causes already exist and cannot be manipulated. It chooses what already exists and looks backward to explain why. Correlation or perspective research design. It attempts to explore relationships to make predictions. It uses one set of subjects with two or more variables for each. Later on, yung ating susunod na speaker, itatalakay po kanya kasi kung ano yung mga methods. What are the methods that can be used in these different types of research? The exploratory research can be quite informal, relying on secondary research such as reviewing available literature or data, or qualitative approaches such as informal discussions with consumers, employees, management or competitors, and more formal approaches through in-depth interviews, focus group projective methods, case studies, or pilot studies. The exploratory research is a type of research conducted for a problem that has not been clearly defined. It helps determine the best research design, data collection method, and selection of subjects. The results of exploratory research are not usually useful for decision-making by themselves, but they can provide significant insight into a given situation. So I just want to repeat this, that the result of the exploratory, meaning the conclusion in the exploratory research, are not usually useful for decision making by themselves, but they can provide significant insight into a given situation. In a way, talagang makakatulong naman siya, but then it cannot be used, or it's not useful for making our decision or for having our decision. The next one is phenomenological research. It is an inductive, descriptive research approach developed from phenomenological philosophy. It aims to describe an experience as it is actually lived by the person. So of course, when we say inductive, we have descriptive. So it's a combination of inductive and at the same time, you are describing. Okay, so it's concerned with the study of experience from the perspective of the individual, bracketing taken for granted assumptions and usual ways of perceiving. They are based in a paradigm of personal knowledge and subjectivity, and emphasize the importance of personal perspective and interpretation. As such, they are powerful for understanding subjective experience, gaining insights into people's motivations and actions, and cutting through the clutter of taken for granted assumption and conventional wisdom. Okay, so we have the general approaches to research. As we have said, yung methods, and of course, siguro tatalakay din yan. But then, I will just give some points on the general approaches to research. The first one is qualitative, quantitative, or mixed. Ito po yung mention ko before na your research could be qualitative or qualitative in nature or quantitative in nature or a combination of this, quali-quanti, or it's a mixed method. Okay, so here is now the difference between qualitative and quantitative. So the general approaches to research in social sciences and later in other disciplines, the following two research methods can be applied depending on the properties of the subject matter and on the objective of the research. For the qualitative, understanding of human behavior and the reasons that govern such behavior involves analysis of data using words from interviews, pictures, example, video or objects, or example, we have the artifacts. Then we have the quantitative, involves analysis of numerical data and their relationship. In other words, if you look at it, qualitative and quantitative, sa qualitative kasi it's more on characteristics, while quantitative it is numeric in nature. But as I've said, you can combine this later para magkaroon tayo ng mixed method, quali and quanti. So I just want to share my research. Meron ko kasi akong research na quali and quanti, yung sa aking dissertation, wherein I use this two, quali and quanti. So nagkaroon ako rito on the part of qualitative. On the part of qualitative, nagkaroon ako ng interview, focus group discussion, and aside from that, nagkaroon ako ng questionnaire, but that questionnaire is quantitative in nature. Kaya doon po pumasok yung qualitative and quantitative. So nagkaroon po ako ng mixed method, making use of the qualitative and the quantitative. Okay, so qualitative research is a research dealing with phenomena that are difficult or impossible to quantify mathematically, such as beliefs, meanings, attributes, and symbolizers. So that's why yung sinabi ko kanina na when we say qualitative research, it is more on characteristics. It is more on characteristics, while quantitative, it's more on numerics. It's more on numbers, I should say. Qualitative researchers aim to gather an in-depth understanding of human behavior and the reasons that govern such behavior. The qualitative method investigates the why and how of decision making, not just what, where, and when. So you'll take note of that. So of course, when we say why and how, it is not answered. It is not answered by numeric in nature. Maybe it is answered by word sentence, or a word or a sentence. So diyan pa pumapasok yung tinatawag nating qualitative data. It is not just what, where, and when. Quantitative research, on the other hand, is generally made using scientific method, which can include the generation of models, theories, and hypotheses, the development of instruments and methods for measurement, experimental control and manipulation of variables, collection of empirical data, modeling and analysis of data, and evaluation of results. So if you look at it, lahat po ito ay halos numeric in nature. So we have qualitative, inductive way. We have from fact to theory, explore factors that could explain. This is not the difference between qualitative and quantitative. Explore factors that could explain why a given event occurs. Establish patterns. Develop theory for understanding how and why an event occurs. Okay, so on the other hand, quantitative is deductive. So if you look at it now, doon sa ating qualitative, that is inductive, while in quantitative, we have deductive in nature. From theory to fact, establish cause-effect relationship, relate occurrence of variable with other variables, establish generalization for prediction and control. And for the second to the last slide, I think, it refers to the systematic empirical investigation of any phenomena via statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques. The objective of quantitative research is to develop and employ mathematical models, theories, and or hypotheses pertaining to phenomena. Again, here, if you look at it, mathematical or computational techniques, because of the data we gathered is numeric in nature. While, yes, okay, so I think this concludes my sharing on the types of research as well as the introduction of the general research. So once again, sa inyo pong lahat, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Thank you very much, Sir Ediel, for the very comprehensive basic understanding po ng ating research. and research in general. Thank you, sir, for your sharing, sir. At this juncture, may we ask po if you have questions po to our speaker, Dr. Andres from Philippine Normal University. Sir, may 10-second delay po tayo ah. So, intayin po natin, sir, yung kanilang ano po, yung if they have.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
uh, Anyway, yung third speaker po natin for this morning ay ready na rin po. So, from Ma'am Edita Blas, thank you daw po, sir.
Maraming salamat rin po, Ma'am Blas.
Of course, si Ma'am Hilda Mariano.
May question siya, Ma'am. Sir.
Words of gratitude and appreciation.
Thank you, Ma'am. Thank you, Ma'am Hilda.
Apa. Si Ma'am Jonalyn Martin.
Ma'am Jonalyn, thank you po.
Yeah, so while waiting, sir, allow me also to present my screen. Ay, sir, isaglit lang po. I-out ko lang muna yung screen ninyo so that I can share my screen.
Yes, sir.
Para for your certificate, sir. Okay, so while waiting po, i-present ko lang po itong aking PowerPoint. Nababasa mo, sir, dyan sa ano mo, sir, sa area ay dyan sa dashboard mo, sir, may mga nag-comment po. Wala pa
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
sir. Wala pa namang nagtatanong so far.
Yes, sir. Opo.
So again, Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, Schools Division of Santiago City awards the Certificate of Appreciation to Edelberto Andres, PhD, for his invaluable services rendered as research speaker on basics of research during the conduct of the Division Basic Education Research Conference, DBERC 2021, given this 28th day of April 2021 at the Schools Division of Santiago City, signed Dr. Cherry S. Ramos, CESO 5, Schools Division Superintendent. Sir, on behalf of our Schools Division Research Committee, headed of course by our chairperson, Sir Jonathan Fronda, and of course our advisor and consultant, our SDS, Dr. Cherry Salarzon Ramos, we express our sincerest appreciation and gratitude, sir, for answering to our invitation and of course for sharing your knowledge, your expertise, sir, and technical know-how on the matters and topic that you have shared. We will be forever thankful, sir, for Philippine Normal University North Luzon and for your efforts, sir, and for your sharing this morning.
Yes.
Maraming salamat po, Sir Edil. Ayan,
maraming salamat rin po sa SDO Santiago City. Maraming salamat po sa pag-i-invite sa amin at sana nabigyan ko po kayo ng kahit konting kaalaman mula sa aking sharing. Muli po maraming salamat po sa ating lahat.
Definitely, sir. Thank you very much, Sir Edil. Extend din po our sincerest thanks sa pamunuan, sir, ng Pamantasang Normal ng Pilipinas. Ano ba ang Tagalog?
Yes, sir. Yes po.
Hilagang...
Makakarating po, sir.
Sir, Hilagang Luzon ba, sir? North Luzon. Tama ba, sir?
Yes, sir.
Hilagang Luzon. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. And for also kay Dr. The Executive Director and Provost, Dr. Leticia Narag Aquino. Maraming salamat po, sir. And all of this, syempre, is under the project po and Memorandum of Agreement between Philippine Normal University and SDO Santiago City under Project Brightest Plus. Thank you, sir. Edil, maraming salamat po, Doc Edil.
Maraming salamat po rin, sir.
Yes, sir. Yan. At this juncture, allow me po to introduce our third speaker for this morning session. Our third and last, I think the speaker this morning session is a graduate of St. Paul University Philippines in BS Mathematics. She finished her Master of Arts in Education, specializing in mathematics at the University of La Salette, and currently writing her proposal dissertation in her degree of Doctor of Philosophy from the Philippine Normal University, Manila, in mathematics education. Dear colleagues in the SDO Santiago City, help me welcome with virtual applause our third speaker, Ma'am Vivian R. Mauricio. Hi, Ma'am Vivian.
Hello,
Good
Hello, sir. Good morning.
nice to see you po
Hello po, good
again.
morning.
Good
Nice
morning,
to
ma'am.
hear your voice, though I cannot see you.
Yes,
Good
ma'am. Opo.
morning.
Good morning
Okay
po.
po. Good morning
Shall we
again.
start, ma'am? Before that, ma'am, makikita mo po dyan sa screen mo, ma'am, yung share.
Oo, sir.
Click,
Oo. Kita ko na
click
po.
nyo po, ma'am, yung
Oo, sir.
share. And then,
Okay,
share
sir.
screen po.
Okay,
And
sir.
then, click nyo po yung, makikita nyo po yung screen nyo doon, ma'am. Pakiclick po yung screen mismo, ma'am.
Share screen.
Apo, entire screen. Click nyo po yun, ma'am. Tapos, magbo-blue po yung share button. I-click nyo lang po yung word na share.
Ayan. Bakit tayo? Ay,
Sana magaling ako magbigay ng instructions, ma'am.
saglit. Naano ko na
I-click
kanina eh.
apa.
Ayun.
And then, kapag na-click nyo na yun, ma'am, ayun. Okay, I think meron na dito sa akin, ma'am.
Ako,
Ay,
pero
yeah.
nakikita ko,
Wait lang.
sir, dito. Tama ba yung
Ah,
na-share ko?
apa. Tapos, ma'am, punta na po kayo dun sa inyong PowerPoint presentation.
Oh. Wait, sana yung PowerPoint.
Apa.
Natatakpan kasi. Saan?
I-hide nyo na lang muna, ma'am. Hide nyo na lang. Ayan, okay po.
Okay.
Okay, ma'am. Tapos i-present nyo na siya, ma'am. Okay. So,
Okay.
ladies
Thank
and
you very
gentlemen,
much
again,
for
let
the
us
assistance,
welcome
sir.
Ma'am Vivian Mauricio po. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, sir. Thank you. So, a pleasant morning to our esteemed heads, educators of Schools Division of Santiago City. It's my first time to talk with a group of the SDO faculty members or teachers. So it's an honor talking in front of you, mga ma'am, sirs. So the COVID-19 has created new challenges, not only in the teaching and learning processes or in the classroom situation, but including to us educator researchers. In contrast with the pandemic, it has also presented an opportunity to implement new methods and processes in the area of research, particularly in data gathering procedures. It has always been expected that teachers should do innovations, not only in the teaching, but more so in the area of research in order in order that nobody should be left behind in this time of pandemic. It is through a better data management that we will be able to preserve, understand, and communicate the needs and concerns of our teachers, our students, and other stakeholders. So once again, good morning, everyone. It is my pleasure to give you such information. And today, I am tasked to discuss about the methods of research. So I have shared my slides now. Now, I just want to give an overview of the topics I'm going to discuss in this session. I included the paradigm shift in research, concepts in research methods, tools for data collection, particularly the traditional synchronous and asynchronous in comparison of these three, and then some tips in observing ethical issues in gathering data. Okay. Although in the previous presentation and lectures of my colleagues, they have discussed tips and the observing of ethical issues in gathering data. I included this as one part because I know that when we have to collect data, when we do the collection of data, which is actually one of the processes that we are going to observe in data and the methods of research, then we really need to have the observance of the ethics per se when talking about conducting of data. Okay, so we all know that there is really a paradigm shift, not only in terms of the education setup because of the effect of the COVID-19, but more so, we are also affected in terms of the conduct of research. Because if we try to look back and compare the situations, we cannot do a lot of face-to-face research nowadays. So I have included what is research in the new normal. So due to COVID-19, many institutions posed to eliminate non-essential contract, okay, um, of the participants and research staff. This is because we have to observe the proper protocol as being mandated by the IATF group, that we have to observe the proper protocol whenever we go outside, and especially when we are going to conduct research. Sometimes there are data that we need to really verify, but if you try to plan going outside, then I think you always have to observe the protocol. Okay, and then another reason is to shift focus to SARS-CoV-2 related research. So I think in the new normal, we may not be concentrating anymore our data gathering or our research topics just confined in the classroom setting, but we also need to relate this to what really the effect of this SARS-CoV-2 in relation to instruction, okay, whenever we want to conduct a research. And then the third one is another reason is to adapt to necessary changes to accommodate safety protocol. Okay, so this is actually the concepts or findings mentioned by one of our speakers, Dr. Rungduin of PNU Manila. Okay, so as I've said, a lot of interruptions now are being experienced, and although interruptions in data collection could have severe consequences for research productivity as well, the ability to support researchers and to make meaningful scientific advancements, the COVID-19 pandemic is also compelling us to become innovative. So we have to be compelled to take innovations. That's why technology-based research procedures may illuminate opportunities for disseminating interventions that may not have been previously attempted. So it's true. We may see the COVID-19 as a threat to our educational setup, especially in the classroom and in taking advantage of doing a research. But on the other hand, on the other side of the world, we can say that through this pandemic, it created a lot of several or varied ways of documenting as well as gathering information from our target respondents or clients. Okay, so what is this paradigm shift that we have now? So from the usual face-to-face of methods of collecting a data, we can now observe the use of gathering data in an online and digital-based methodologies. So according to SNI et al. In 2016, um, it was mentioned in his research or study that digital methods, the use of online and digital technologies to collect and analyze research data is or it should be practiced. Okay, so in short, if you try to look at these words of ISNI in 2016, meaning to say, the use of digital-based methodologies in collecting data is not actually new in this pandemic time. So it has been used by several researchers already. So it has the concept of body physical interaction. So in short, even if we are going to make use of online and digital-based methodologies, we can still see that there is a body in physical interaction, especially when we are going to make use of the so-called the synchronous or the online method in conducting our research. Of course, digital technology is very much evident in the online and digital-based methodologies. And of course, we cannot deny the fact that we still have to make use of the methods we still have to observe the use of the different methods in coming up with our research data. Only there was an innovation that was added to the different face-to-face methods that are being used in getting or gathering data. Okay, so let me give some concepts about the types of research that we usually conduct. Okay, most of the time, and especially nowadays, we can be conducting more on quantitative research. Quantitative research actually measures attitudes, behaviors, opinions, and other variables to support or reject a premise, and this is done by collecting numerical data which can be seen or quantifiable to identify statistical significance. So in quantitative research, we can still make use of quantitative research because when we use the online manner of gathering data, these are being quantified, these are being expressed, though the things that we are measuring could suggest qualitative research in nature. This can still be quantified, like for example attitude. How can we quantify this? Perhaps by providing a checklist method or a scale wherein the reflection of the attitude of someone that is being asked can be quantified statistically. Okay, another one is behavior. Although behavior can be qualitative, but it can become quantitative when you are going to make use of online survey instrument. Okay, opinion and other variables. Okay, so that's about quantitative research. Okay, qualitative research, usually when a researcher is conducting a qualitative research, his goal or his aim is to get a better understanding through first-hand experiences, truthful reporting, and quotations of actual conversations. And in conducting qualitative research also, the aim is to understand how the participants derive meaning from their surroundings and how their meaning influences their behavior. So in qualitative research, uh, although we make use of the online or technology based, we can still make use of qualitative because uh, there are several online methodologies wherein we can find out this qualitative data in nature, especially when we try to see the respondents online. So we can still obtain qualitative research data from them. Okay, because they can give it through interpreting what is happening or what could be their feelings regarding their surroundings or what could influence their behavior, especially in terms of especially in this time of pandemic. So those are two types of research that we can conduct, although there are still several researches that types of researches that we can conduct, as mentioned by Dr. Edil a while ago. And if you try to combine this qualitative and quantitative research using the methods that are supposed to be for quantitative and qualitative research, then I think we are using the mixed method in conducting research. Okay, so before going to the different methods or variations in conducting online gathering data, I think there is a need for me to differentiate what methods and methodology is all about. So when we talk of methods, okay, it's a process by which data are collected in research study. Okay, and according to Gabriel in 2010, it is also mentioned as research tool or component of research. So when we talk of methods, this therefore pertains to the different tool that we are going to use in gathering information or in conducting a research. Okay, while methodology, this is the overall philosophy or underpinning research, whereas research methods are the practical guidelines or techniques used to produce research that's according to Crow and Shepard 2010. So, in the methodology, it's actually the practice, the philosophy of a certain researcher which he wants to employ or to use in conducting his research. Okay, he can be using the quantitative, the actual research, or any other types of research that he wants to conduct. Okay, and then another one is methods is the study of how research is done and explains why we use these various methods in their context. So that's according to Singh 2016. Okay, so I'm not going to elaborate so much on methods and methodology because I know most of us have been enrolled in our PhD and master's degree. So we have discussed a lot of these concepts. Okay, so in this new normal, how then can we adapt the new normal research methodology? So according to the lecture given by Dr. Rumar Abrigar, um, there are 3 steps in which he gave to adapt in the new normal research methodology. So number 1 is reinvent on how to collect data. Okay, so pumapasok dito yung paggamit natin ng mga iba't ibang teknolohiya, okay, especially for those even if we are that not so much what do you call this, not so much used to the use of the gadgets, then we have to learn the use of the gadgets because this is now the new normal in getting information from our client or our supposed respondents of the study. So we have to reinvent on how we can collect data. So we apply strategies that are actually not being practiced in the face-to-face model. In the face-to-face that we had before. Okay, so another one is be creative and come up with novel approaches to respond to the challenges of the pandemic. So when we say be creative, it does not only creative in terms of the strategies, in terms of the gadgets, in terms of the model that we are going to use, but be creative in such a way that we should come up with new types of studies, new ideas that are actually related to the teaching and learning process and in relation to the impact of the COVID-19 as its effect or its impact to the teaching and learning process. So another one is translate the accumulated rich experience into current practices. Okay, this is correct because there are actually very rich information that we can obtain, especially in this time of pandemic, in relation to in relation to the learning and the teaching practices nowadays that we are experiencing, that we are encountering. There are lots of topics wherein or experiences of our learners wherein we can make use of this data to come up with new rules or guidelines on how really to teach in the this new normal that we are experiencing. Okay, so from traditional to digital-based methods, since we are in the new normal, so what are some of the research methods that we can use, especially in the gathering of information? I did not focus so much on the methods of sampling, methods of what else, the different descriptive methods, because in the methods of sampling, that could be that could be explained very well in the procedure, in the process, depending on the type of research that you are going to conduct. So let's take a look on what are the digital-based methods as compared to the traditional method in gathering the informations or data that we want from our students or clients or supposed to be respondents. So in the traditional method, if you notice, we've been using the interview, the face-to-face, the focus group discussion, fielding, experiment, and observation. I'm sorry for my spelling. Kinulang ng E. Okay? Experiment and observation. Okay, so usually in if you try to look back, ito yung mga ginagamit natin. Okay? We make use of interview because we have access to the respondents. We have access to our target respondents or participants in our study. We also have that focus group discussion because we don't have any problem approaching them. We just have to set up our time. We just have to set up our schedule meeting them. And fielding is also done, especially when it requires data that pertains to the observation of skills. Like, for example, teaching demonstration of students, the pre-service teachers, and many other aspects of research that requires the use of fielding and experiment and observation. So in the new normal, we have the method of the synchronous and the asynchronous method. So how do we differentiate these two? We mean the synchronous method when it is virtual, real-time interaction, and co-present in time. Okay? So just like when we are teaching and using the Zoom or the Google Meet, then this is an example of a virtual real-time interaction because we have to set the same time meeting each other through the online session. And again, though interview is in the traditional, we can also do the same. Interview can also be set up in asynchronous manner. Okay, focus group discussion can also be set up. How? Isn't it that when you use the Zoom meeting or the Google Meet, you can have group sessions there. So you can actually form group out of this focus group discussion. You may form groups of these participants that you want to involve in your study and involve yourself in the group and try to observe and ask questions to them. So it's still possible to make use of this interview and the focus group discussion in a synchronous session. Okay, live observation can also be applicable in the synchronous because once the camera is open, once the Zoom meeting is open, then we can really we can ask them to open their cameras, and at the same time, we try to observe, okay, what particular skill, what particular attitude or what particular behavior we see in them. So again, the this live observation is still possible, is possible in using uh, as a method in gathering the data that we really want to have in our research. Okay, and another one is the online text-based discussion. So in an online text-based discussion, mamaya makikita natin what are really devices, what are some of the digital-based methods that we can use in online text-based discussion. We can actually make use of our FB or the messenger. We can also make use of our cell phones. Okay. Another one is the asynchronous. So if it is possible to conduct or gather data or information in asynchronous method, we can also have the asynchronous. So what's the difference between the two? When we say asynchronous, it's not happening at the same time. So the presence of the two, the researcher and the researchee, could not be in the same time. Okay, so in an asynchronous, we can still have the online survey. Okay, the online survey or the survey, the journal diaries, wherein the participants can be given guide questions or guidelines or questions that are actually related to the data that you want to obtain from the research. So you just give them in advance the procedure or the questions, and they can answer it using their journal diaries. Then another one is the asynchronous interview, and this can be facilitated by the use again of forms, okay, that by the use of forms or by the use of online surveys. Okay, so what are these platforms that we expect to use for asynchronous data collection? Okay, I know everyone is using Google Forms in um, giving a quiz or in giving examinations to our students nowadays through the online. So Google Form is one of the asynchronous data collection tool that we can actually employ in obtaining our data. So it is described as a service that allows to collect information by simple web form. Using the Google form, we can make a survey poll. So these are the things that we can actually obtain from using Google form. We can use survey poll. We can also collect other information in any streamlined way. What else? We can also use Google form for multiple choice type of data collection. We can also use Google form for open-ended question. Another one, we can also use Google Form for a checklist type of data collection. So if your instrument falls any of the um, method that I've mentioned, then I think you can make use of a Google Form to get those particular informations or data, the information or data that you want from your prospect respondents or participants. Okay, so SurveyMonkey is also one. It's an internet program, so you can just use the Google to find the SurveyMonkey, and hosting site that enables a person to develop a survey for use over internet. So an introductory section allows explanation of the purpose of the survey. So you can also include what's the purpose of the survey. Um, you can include some details in that survey monkey that is actually being found in the internet. Okay. Okay. Another one, the mobile survey. The mobile survey. This is actually another method in data collection for this pandemic, where researchers can turn to mobile survey, okay, and they can make use of short messages, SMS, uses of text messages, interactive voice response, automated voice survey. But take note that when you use the survey, the mobile survey, we have to be careful and find out whether really the person who is typing or giving the answer is the target client or the target respondents in your study. So be innovative, make some innovations on how you can check the veracity of the personality of the person who is actually using the mobile survey. Okay, and then in a mobile survey, we have to be concise. Okay, you have to give short but it's well explained details of what they are going to do, especially in the instructions on how to answer the survey. Okay, and then it take note that the mobile can only accommodate number of questions before loading to significant break off. Okay, so you have to observe that. Okay, another one is write questions carefully. So this is what I'm saying a while ago. When you are going to write questions, you have to formulate in advance and try to see, to look at the question that everything should contain the data that you want to gather from that particular individual. So it should be comprehensive but concise. Okay. Mobile survey also can be used in sending reminders to your prospect respondents. Okay, and then you can also check your sample if you have list of sample, and then you have to validate. Okay, and the validation, as mentioned by Ma'am Jopot while ago, is actually one of the processes, one of the methods that you need to conduct, okay, whenever you are going to do a research, okay, because validation of the instrument is very important. So, are we going to have validation of instrument even if the data collection is done in an online? Yes, we have to. Okay, and this can only be done in validating of data. You can also upload. You can also upload in any manner you want, using a mobile or using the Google form. Uh, an instrument that you formulated or you adapted, but you still have to manage the retrieval of that instrument by observing the proper way and by observing the processes of how to validate the instrument. Okay, so validation of instrument when done in an online, you do not need so many respondents to answer your questionnaire, but you only need few of them to find out or to validate your questionnaire. Okay, so ito na yung, dito na pumapasok yung tinatawag nating piloting, okay? Piloting of the instrument. So run a pilot first, so you can have 10 to 15 of your respondents to answer the survey. So for those unsure about whether mobile is a good fit, run a pilot study to assess the feasibility of these modes. It can be a subject of research if you want. Okay, so in short, whenever you use any of the different gadget or online collection of data, still there is a need to conduct pilot testing of your instrument as part of your methodology in conducting a research. Okay, so I would like to point out some of the advantages and disadvantages of online data gathering. Okay, so as mentioned by Dr. Carlo Magno, researcher has no direct contact with the respondents. Okay, in an online there is no direct contact. Okay, you can see them, physically, but isn't it that in a face to face, the contact is more intense. Mas makikita natin yung behavior nila, mas makikita niyo kung how they react, or how they fill up a form. And you may try to explain to them well if there are some questions, although this can also be processed, but it's really very different when it comes to the online setup of gathering information. So an advantage that you have to ensure completely anonymity. Okay, so participants do not feel the social pressure to stay. So that's an advantage. They don't need the social pressure as compared to the face-to-face data of collection. Sometimes you really need to make a follow-up by going back to that person immediately after answering, so that you want to ensure that the data or the form that you have given to your respondents actually will be given back to you. Okay. Some of the disadvantage, researcher cannot see visual cues to determine if participants understand the contents of the consent form. Okay, correct? And then another one is researchers could not provide immediate clarification if participants have questions. Okay, and then researchers cannot easily verify that participants are legally old enough to consent. Okay, this is true because we cannot really determine immediately. So sometimes, even if we have given them the survey form already, sometimes we cannot really determine immediately. Okay, we cannot immediately determine those things since pwedeng magkaroon sila ng problem sa connection. So, pwedeng magkaroon ng hindi pagkakaunawaan dun sa instrument. So, they cannot verify immediately. So, you can actually set, if these things happens, then you can set up perhaps a phone interview or an online through Zoom, so that everything should be clarified and everything should be clear. And because they will understand well what is the purpose of conducting the research, then the data that you are going to gather are reliable and valid. Because if they don't know in answering such question, then I guess your purpose of obtaining the research data will be defeated. So it must be clear to them. Okay. So you can set an online Zoom meeting, or you can set a mobile phone patch to your prospect respondents, I should say. Okay, so still, participants' responses are electronically transferred from their computer to the server to the researcher's computer. Okay, and as a result, the advantage is data is not easily lost. Just like when, if it is face-to-face, pwedeng mabuhusan o mawala yung mga data na mga forms na binigay natin sa kanila. But in this case, it can be saved, especially when, it can be saved in a longer period of time, especially when these questionnaires or surveys are being sent in email. Okay, it can be saved in a Google Drive. So you have you have all the possibility of accessing the saved data, even if you are not going to immediately look into the survey that you have sent them. Okay, one of the disadvantages, I think, is the threats to confidentiality. Okay, so we know that, but if you are going to ensure confidentiality, then I think we need to observe the Data Privacy Act. Okay, so we have to observe the Data Privacy Act also in gathering information. Okay, so addressing ethical issues in an online gathering. Okay, addressing ethical issues in an online gathering. So we have you have to obtain them their consent. Okay, in one of the discussions or lectures presented to us in one of the webinars that we attended or I attended, the best way daw of getting or obtaining a consent form is in your in your survey form you can already include a consent form. First, you may ask them if their age is 17 and below, then if they check that, okay, it should be clear in the instruction that when they check that 17 years old and below, then there is already an included consent form for their parents to answer the data. Okay? And do not forget to ask them to enclose their signature also in that form because that's very important. Okay, and then if the prospect respondents is 18 years old and above, they do not need the consent of their parents anymore because they are no longer minors. So you still need to include the consent form, and at the same time, they will be the one to sign the consent form. Okay, and in the consent form, if they are going to sign using the e-signature or they are going to sign using their handwritten or using their pen, I should say, then they can upload that particular survey form in the Google Drive or in their Gmail. Okay, so consent can be dispensed for the use of educational tests. If the nature of the data that you are going to gather has something to do with the personal profile of students, then I think you need to really have this protection of data. So you have to observe this consent form. So it can be through the educational test, survey procedure. These are the types of data that can be gathered using a consent form or interview procedure as long as participants cannot be identified. Okay? So we have to protect the anonymity of our respondents. So in that case, we let them sign a consent form. And then design the consent statements understandable for the participants. So it must be simple. Do not make use of highfalutin words or statements or phrases in that particular survey form or in consent, I should say, in the consent form. Simple enough to understand, for them to understand what is being asked of them. So, kung ang participants natin, lalo na kung manggagaling sa community, kung mga parents, syempre hindi naman pare-pareho yung educational qualification ng ating mga magulang or they may be exposed or they may have different language or dialect. Then I suppose it's better that we have to adapt the most accessible or the most convenient dialect or language for them. So kung Ilocano, pwede naman Ilocano yung consent form. Pwede rin naman gawing Tagalog or pwede rin gawing English. Okay? So provide a space on top of the online form that participants agree to provide their consent to participate in the study. Okay? And adjust text side, provide sounds and illustration science language for people with disability. So, I think this is the challenge. Ito yung challenge sa mga researcher, especially if your prospect respondents have disability. It's a very, very big challenge for the researcher. So, you have to adapt something or you have to adapt a method that you think is very much convenient to both of you as researcher and to your participants. Okay, so another issue on addressing ethical issues in an online data gathering is the document consent. Okay, in institutional ethics board. So if you have the board in your institution, then I think this is one of the agreement that you need to consult with and come up with such agreement on institutional ethics. Okay, so the I consent is an equivalent to a signature. So when in the document that they use, they click, for example, the I consent. It's understood that they that's already a sign of their signature. Okay, but you have to agree. So it's an this should be discussed in the institution. Okay, providing an e-signature also in the document consent is very is one of the things that we can ask them to do. So signature is not needed for minimal risk. Respondents need to have an opportunity to ask questions. Okay, so they should be able to uh, ask questions okay, regarding the document consent. Contact information of the researcher is provided and respond to a timely manner. Okay, and if study involves beyond minimal risk, questions on about process, benefits, and risks of the study can be included. Okay, so these are some of the things that could be found in the document consent whenever we do such consent or survey form for our online data gathering. I think merong nawawala sa aking nasaan na yun? Okay, so other do you have any question? Do you have any questions regarding what I have discussed? So in short, I think it's very important that the the implementation of consent in data gathering must be very much observed, okay? Because anybody can just make use of the data that that you gathered if these are not being protected. Okay, so in addition, I think merong nawala na slides dito sa slides ko. I don't know what happened. So in addition, what else, what other methods can we actually observe or do we observe when gathering data, Okay, of course, as I've mentioned, we still have to include the different methods of observing the different methods of sampling. So in the sampling procedure, you still need to employ the appropriate sampling guidelines whenever you're going to consider the number of samples to be taken in your study. Okay, I don't know if there are still institutions who are making use of the what do you call this in sampling, the old the traditional way of sampling, which is the use of Slovin's formula. But in many studies now, the use of the Slovin's formula is no longer utilized. Instead, I guess in the DepEd, you are really making use of other methods of sampling. Okay, you can also employ the different types of sampling, such as the stratified sampling, the what else? The stratified sampling, the cluster sampling. Sometimes we also make use of the purposive and the what convenience sampling, if you are familiar with the convenience sampling. But the use of these sampling methods are it should be in relation to the type of the research method that you are going to conduct. Okay, so in a descriptive type, okay, you can make use of sampling methods, such as the what I've mentioned a while ago, stratified sampling. You can make use of that. Or sometimes we also make use of the purposive sampling depending on the purpose of conducting your study. Okay, so what else? Setting of the study. Setting of the study is still very applicable. So you still have to mention, of course, in the data gathering procedure. In the data gathering procedure, you still need to identify which area or what particular area do you need to conduct your study. Okay, and the research instrument, which was discussed by Ma'am Jopat a while ago, is very important. So we cannot gather the data if there is no pre-validated instrument that we are going to use in gathering our data. So take note that this is still very important. Although what I've mentioned much in my presentation is on the methodology of gathering information through the use of online method. Please do not forget still some of the things that are included in the methods of research. Okay? So in the methods of research, again, it is still very important to explain also what particular procedure or what data gathering procedure are you going to employ in your studies. So take note that in an experimental type of research, we have to formulate first the steps. Okay, we have to formulate first the methodology, the steps before conducting the study, because this is actually your guideline. Because in an experimental research, it is more of the procedure in conducting. It is more of the methods that should be observed rather than the outcome of the study. Okay, because once the method is not being clear, once the method does not really fit in the type of research method that you are going to employ, then I think it defeats the purpose of identifying or gathering the data that you need in your study. Okay, what else do we need to use in the methods of data? Okay, aside from the research design, of course, the research design, again, this depends upon the kind of data or the kind of research type or this research type that you are going to employ. So if it is a descriptive type of data, then you have to make use of the descriptive design method. Okay, so if it is an experimental, then you have to take note of the different experimental methods of conducting data, gathering data, I should say. Okay. If it is an action research, in action research data, the methods are not so, hindi siya masyadong mabibigat yung methods na gagamitin, lalong-lalo na sa statistical, pagka sa action research. Anyway, somebody will discuss about action research afterwards. I think I am not going to elaborate more on that because it is taken as one topic afterwards. Okay, so I think these are the things I can share to you whenever we try to conduct or gather information or gather data. We should always have to very critical when it comes to the methodology that we are going to implement. Okay, the methodology is only a part of chapter 3, but it really requires scrutinization on the processes that are involved, because once the process are not in relation, are not aligned with the statement of the problem, with the research designs, then we will not be able to come up with the best data that we need to have in our research. And that could also defeat the purpose of conducting a research. So I guess that ends my presentation. And it's an honor presenting to you, although I have not shared so much on the concept itself or the concept of methodology. I guess you've learned some of the different methods that we are using in gathering information. So nowadays, I expect that most of us are very familiar with the different online methodologies that we use. And if you come to think of it, the use of online is very much helpful. It is very much helpful in conducting or in gathering data nowadays, because aside from easy to do, um, it is also very effective, and you can immediately get the data that you want. Okay. Aside from that, the data would uh, last long because it can be saved in a better data management aspect. Like, for example, in the Google Drive, or we can make use of our computer. Just have to protect our data and save as much copy as needed, so that you still have access on the data that you have gathered, even for a long period of time. Okay, so I think that's all. And thank you for listening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Vivian. At this juncture po, if you have queries or clarifications regarding po sa sharing ni Prof. Vivian po, regarding sa topic na diniscuss niya,
Okay,
kindly
thank you
type
very
in
much,
na lang po
sir.
sa comment. Yes, ma'am. Type in na lang po sa comment section po sa ating pong YouTube channel. Meantime, let us award this certificate para kay Ma'am Vivian po. Wait lang, ma'am. Saglit lang po. Okay, so Republic of the Philippines, Department of Education, Schools Division of Santiago City awards this certificate of... Saglit
Hello,
lang, ma'am.
sir.
Hello, ma'am. Wait lang po, ma'am. Saglit. Wait lang po. Yan. Awards this certificate of appreciation
Meron
to
naman.
Professor Bibian R. Mauricio for her invaluable services rendered as resource speaker on research methodology in the new normal during the conduct of the Division Basic Education Research Conference, DBERC 2021, given this 28th day of April 2021, the Schools Division of Santiago City. Signed, Cherry S. Ramos, EDD, Session Schools Division Superintendent. So, ma'am, on behalf of our top management, headed of course by our Schools Division Superintendent, Dr. Cherry Salarzon Ramos, and our chairperson in the
Hello
Schools
po. Good
Research Division
afternoon and
Research
good morning. Wala na
Committee.
po bang
Uh,
nag-off yata?
Hello, ma'am. Nandito pa po. Nandito pa po, ma'am. Narinig niyo po ako? Hello, ma'am. Can you hear
Hello,
me po?
sir.
Hello, ma'am. Naririnig ka po namin. Hello, ma'am. Naririnig ka po namin. Or ako po ang hindi naririnig. Pwede pong pa-type po sa comment section po kung naririnig po ako. Ayan. So on behalf of the top management of the Schools Division of Santiago City, headed of course by our Schools Division Superintendent Dr. Cherry Salarzon Ramos, and the chairperson of the Schools Division Research Committee, ISDS, Jonathan A. Fronda, we would like to extend and express our sincerest Gratitude, Ma'am Professor Bibian R. Mauricio, Philippine Normal University, North Luzon, for sharing your expertise and technical know-how on the subject matter uh, given po sa inyo. Maraming salamat po. Ma'am Bibian, may tanong lang po dito si Ma'am Ruby Simbulan regarding po sa which research methodology do you think can best shed light to the needs of small particular respondents, example health status of our LGBT learners in our school during health crisis. So, yan po yung tanong, Ma'am Bibian, if naririnig po. Thank you po for those who are uh, typing na narinig po ako. Buti na lang may audio ako. Salamat po, Ma'am Lovely Jane and Ma'am Mary Jane Orbilio. So, I think nababasa ni Ma'am. So it's nice that Ma'am Bibian kanina, Mauricio, delineated the difference between method and methodology kasi minsan napag-i-interchange po natin yung dalawa. So magkaiba po 'yon. Yung practice, sabi niya nga po kanina, the methodology heavily focuses on the practice or the theories or yung ating gagamiting strategy sa ating research, while yung methods po falls on more on the tools na gagamitin po natin.
Hello, sir. Good morning, sir. Ay,
Hello, ma'am.
I think
Ma'am,
Ma'am Ruby,
naririnig niyo po?
sorry. Ma'am Ruby Simbolan. I think your question is, which research methodology do you think can best shed light to the needs of a small particular respondents? Example, health status of our LGBT learners in our school during health crisis. Uh, are you referring to the sampling method, ma'am? Or are you referring to the methodology of obtaining the data?
Yun, correct po yun. Kasi it's either the method po ba ang
I
gustong
guess if it is
focus.
sampling, ma'am, anyway, in your school, it depends again about your, if it is a sampling technique that you are asking, ma'am, in terms of how many respondents you are going to take in your study. If you think the number of respondents in your school when it comes to LGBT is very manageable, then I guess make use of the total enumeration method. But if there are a lot of respondents, then I guess you can only do random selection in such a way that every status of the LGBT should be represented.
Okay, so thank you, Ma'am Vivian, Prof. Vivian, for sharing that. I think kung may question
Ma'am
pa po kayo,
Ruby, kontento po ba doon sa sagot po? Ang intindi ko po kasi doon sa tanong nyo is more on the sampling technique to be utilized. Okay.
ayan. So nag-type na po ako kay Ma'am Vivian sa private chat po namin para po marinig niya po tayo. Okay. So the rest po ay mga thank you na lang ang nandito.
Thank you to Ma'am Ruena. Salamat din po.
Thank you very much, ma'am. And of course, kay Ma'am Ruby for asking that question din po. Thank you very much, ma'am, for actively participating and listening to our intently listening to our speaker for this morning. Just a few announcement lang po since hindi po ata ako naririnig ni Ma'am ni Prof. Vivian. This afternoon we still have two speakers. So we will start at around 1:30 po in the afternoon, and then we will have our Assistant Schools Division Superintendent for a very short message. Then we'll proceed immediately to the discussions of our two speakers in the afternoon. Excuse me. So, yun po yung mag-transpire this hapon po with the continuation of our DBERC 2021 Virtual Division Basic Education Research Conference. Again, maraming salamat po for tuning in, and see you po this afternoon for the
Baka sa kanila.
continuation of our program this afternoon. If you have questions po, you can ask later po this afternoon, or pwede nyo pong i-type na lang sa atin pong comment section, and then we'll try to answer it on our session po this afternoon. Maraming salamat po, and again from the Schools Division of Santiago City, our SDS and ASDS, and the rest of the for full force of SDO Santiago City, we extend our sincerest gratitude and appreciation for your participation po in our 5-day training on research. God bless po and stay safe. Again, 1:30 po tayo this afternoon. Thank you.